DePaul University video. Basically, I'm looking at a chase, and this used to be the white elephant that was attached to the children's hospital. Do you know that? That was the white elephant. What did the white elephant do? It provided clothing to those in need. So the children getting treated there could receive different gifts of clothing from the white elephant. And if their families needed it as well, they could receive gifts of clothing from the white elephant as well. So family or individual child could receive gifts of clothing. Now I'm up here, but let me get the piece of garbage rideshare person from behind me who thinks they can bully you with their vehicle. They should fire them all and new ones. But anyways, let's talk about here. They used to have a graduate bar that all the grad students hung out at in Tucson. Now, there was the other bars, but that was mostly with undergraduate. Over here, we had Pat Mann's wake at the bar right here on the second floor. My friend Pat Mann, who died. And at the bar right here, we had the wake. And I contributed, I think, a couple $100 to his burial cost. And a bunch of us raised money to take care of all the costs of the burial. His mother already predeceased him. But again, here's Becchino's Pizza. But again, not much of an area for Lincoln Park, right? I mean, for DePaul University, one of the largest Christian colleges in the United States, that's not much of an entertainment district. Do you know if there's a movie theater around here? There is the old Biograph that's, I think, around here somewhere. But that's like really old, and it shows like one movie. But, you know, it can show different movies. So from 6 to 8 o'clock is the showing for The Big Short. From 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, it can show It's a Wonderful Life. From 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, it can show Four Weddings and a Funeral. Just an example. So it can rotate, like in the morning, midday, like noon. Those are children's usually, especially during the holidays. The children are off. Matinees during the weekday are a great place to send children. But how many movie theaters say we'll give you a discount on the Uber? If your child comes, buys a ticket, drinks, drink and popcorn, you have to buy the ticket, a food item, solid food item, and a beverage. So popcorn or whatever. Just a food item and a beverage and a ticket. We give 25% off the Uber ride. And we have an approved list of Uber drivers that are designed to be kid-friendly, that work with the theater, the AMC. Because right now, you would show all kinds of things. Like, you can show 30-minute segments. Like, the opening is Frosty and the Snowman. And then you move into It's a Christmas Story. And so it goes to Biograph, say, one theater, it has that. It starts at, say 11:30 a.m. It starts, and you get Frosty and the Snowman. It's a half an hour. And you can show a few kids commercials, like for Transformers or other things in there. Truly. You got to make it fun, like really cool videos, really cool shorts, but You can show a Coca-Cola commercial, whatever. And then you move on to It's a Wonderful Life. But the kids are available 7 days a week. See, the kids are home now because school's out for winter session. And now this is prime time for the movie theaters. And they can work with Uber and Lyft. Truly, you don't want them to get on the bus. You don't want them to get on the train. Truly, I used to take it at 6. But again, it's better for them. Less possibilities of problems. And you can do share rides. With the Uber, can go around and pick up like 4 kids. 3 in the back, across the back, 1 in the passenger seat. And the Uber can pick up 4 kids. So your kid can go to the movie with 1 other kid or 4 other kids. And if your kid not, the kids that are going to the same show, they set them up. And on the app, it says their nickname or what name they go by. This is Jimmy. This is Pete. This is as they get in, because you're all going to the same theater. See, they're not sharing rides with anyone else but kids going to the theater. So if your kid's going by himself, he'll meet 3 other friends. The Uber goes around and picks him up, the 3 other kids from the area. And if you have a minivan, you can pick up more. So the movie theater says, okay, there's 8 kids. You have a front seat. You have 3 in the one back seat, 3 in the other back seat. That's 6, 7 kids. So you go around, pick up 7 kids, and on the phone, it tells each of the kids, and they can have an emoji for them, and they have a little funny, profile. Yeah, they set up a profile for themselves. And it shows when they get in the car, it activates the profile. It pops up. And it says, hi, this is Jimmy. I like baseball and action flicks. Because something they like about movies. I love Christmas movies. Or whatever. So set it up, and it's a little tidbit about them. And it gives everybody else, when they pick up the kid, a question to ask them when they get in. It triggers right away, and it says, ask your new about his passion for Christmas movies. What's his favorite? Or what are his top 5? Or say top 2, make it easy. Just say top 2. And it says that, and it pops up. This is Jimmy. Ask him what his top 2 favorite Christmas movies are, because he loves Christmas movies. It could be other movies. Even if you're going to see a Christmas movie, he loves action movies. Ask him his 2 favorite action movies. I love the Transformers and Superman. Superman is an action movie. Or I love Superman and Spider-Man. Or I love Iron Man. And, the X-Men. And my favorite character is Magneto. So again, it can set them up with that. And it gives them all of this. And these kids go to the matinee, the theater. And then they get back home. They have no other option but to go back home. So after the movie, the Uber's there. And they have to get the theater, make sure they get an Uber. Oh, the theater has a doorman. When they get out, it checks them in. Jimmy's here. It shows up on the parents' AMC app. Jimmy is now at movie. And then they give him an armband that has a GPS chip. And it tracks him on premise. Truly. And even an armband, they take it back when they leave. So the Uber comes up. They're about to get in the Uber. They take off the armband. But the armband can have a heart rate monitor, say the kid has seizures or the kid's diabetic or anything else. And so all that biometric stuff they can do at the theater, say the biograph. And you give them the band and it tracks him. If his blood sugar, he's diabetic, you got to make sure they know at the counter, it automatically says right there and then, has peanut allergies, cannot have peanuts, is diabetic, can only have these items. And then the band tracks their blood sugar and alerts them, truly, through a pulse. It vibrates on them. Pulsing vibrate. Boom, 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 boom. Tell them. And the movie theater is alerted too. Truly, it comes up on their tracking app that out of diabetic range. And the kid responds and can take his diabetic medication. But if not, then the person who's in charge of the parental safety comes in and knows where the kid's sitting and enters the movie theater and says, hey, Jimmy, come on out for a second. And then says, do you have your medication? Because you're out of range. And so I can't let you eat any more popcorn or anything like that. And here's a bottle of water. And so start drinking the water, go back and sit down. And the alert will go off once he's back in range, stopping him from spiking. But it might go up a little bit as he digests. But they can set it up where they give him water. It's all part of protection of the child. And if an adult wants that, they can set it up for an adult. They get the armband when they come in, but they have more discretion. With the child, you're a guardian. Once they're in your possession, like all the kids I took, and ask them, Mrs. Piazzi made me the guardian for Greg. I'm in school, and Mrs. Piazzi made me the guardian. Mr. and Mrs. Friedman made me the guardian. Mrs. Gertz made me the guardian. All these parents said, watch over my child. And they made me the guardian of their child. So I drove everywhere. I watched them. I protected them from the bullies. And I did. I protected Jeff Friedman from Josh. Josh stuck him in a locker once. And so that didn't happen again. But to me, he's physically touching him, so I could just threaten Josh right away. It's the proxy where I couldn't prove it was him. It was hearsay. And that was the problem. There was no evidence. It was lots of people telling me it's him, but he never physically admitted to it, him or Benji. But if they did, I would have leveled them. So, believe me, even as a kid, I was righteous and fair, and I took it. I didn't want to take it, but I only act when I have absolute proof. So I didn't act on hearsay. I had to know for a fact. Just as I managed restaurants, people told me certain things, and I would have to watch and observe and prove it. I would do drawer audits and other things, but I would have to prove it. I got the information in, and then I proofed it. So, but I've been doing this with a child. So anything, that's why the principals from elementary school, my principal, he waved me. Mr. Cohen in junior high waved me. In high school, after one time with Rob Anderson, Mr. Brun in Swearingen just waved me. I didn't get called when I stuck, well, when I put Colin Cody, I grabbed him by his neck, had him against the wall, I picked him up, and I wasn't called to the office. I dumped Andrew Coleman upside down in the garbage can. I wasn't called to the office. I had carte blanche. And the funny thing is, it happened at the university. It didn't happen at Benedictine. And, well, I was never called at Benedictine either. But I knew the ombudsman at the University of Arizona. I had carte blanche. So if I ended up kicking the shit out of you, it was all good. I would never get called into any disciplinarian. It was waived. So now you're playing God with me, and you tell me that if I do something to somebody, you're going to call me in, where none of them wanted to have anything to do with me, and then ask the cops down here in Chicago. When I went into the precinct, the commanders went off on the cops. Why am I in here? And how could you pick him up? And they apologized to me and everything else and released me and apologized all the way out. The commanders all knew me. All the sergeants, all the lieutenants, all the area commanders, they knew who I was, and I was a no-touch person. I was a no-touch person. And I listened to him ream people, and he wanted me to. And they reamed them, the cops, their boss, screaming and yelling insanely at them, going off like no tomorrow. I never had a problem with them again, nor any of the others. So they all knew me. I interacted with them. They knew I did everything through a process, and I was highly just. The one time when they called the cops on us fake at Baja, and my owners didn't know my rapport with the police. They didn't have a good rapport. I had a good rapport. When the cops came, because they said we had minors in Baja Beach Club, the officers came up and they said, "Hey, Michael, we know you don't allow minors, and we apologize for this, but we have to enter the door. We're going to go around by bar 1 and come right back out and tell you, have a good night. We're not going to search your place. We're going to go in. We have to go in. And if you see anything, well, you're going to have a problem. But we're going to go in, do the round, come back out, and go. But we have to do this because they said you were serving minors." So what did they do? They walked in, walked around, came back out, and said, "Have a good night, Mike." But they benefited from me. Just like at Charlie's, we stayed open to 2 and 3 in the morning. The pier closed down at noon. I worked it out with mall security. Mall security at Baja, they all love me. And so did all the cops. So, if anyone did anything to me, all I had to do is open my mouth and you were going to jail immediately. It wasn't a question, you were just gone. But I didn't abuse it back then. But it wasn't questioned. You went away. And I'm talking about the one bottle incident that I had where they brought me in. No pictures, no nothing. And that's when the sergeant went off. Couldn't believe they brought me in. And the male and female cop were censured. First of all, he screamed, unbelievably, for I don't know how long, maybe a half an hour. At the top of his lungs, in their face, screaming at them. Screaming like a madman. And I witnessed it. He went off on them. He didn't stop. And then he apologized to me going in and apologized to me when my brother picked me up. But these people didn't question my authority. When I went in and a Chicago cop gave me a ticket for holding the phone in that. And the cop said, Chicago likes his money and we gave you the ticket to generate revenue. And I went in and I told the prosecutors, 2 male prosecutors, yes, they were white, but either way, I went in and told them what the cop said. They didn't say, oh, Michael, we need to put you on a polygraph. They said the police officer said, what? That he gave you the ticket because the city likes to generate revenue. He said the city likes to get its money. And that's why I'm giving you a ticket. And so the 2 male prosecutors said, no problem. We're going to go talk to the judge right now. And this is before court started. I went and talked to him. And they said, we're going to tell the judge to dismiss the ticket. And you'll be the first one called on the docket. And we're apologizing that happened to you. And so I went into court, and right away I heard my name called. Michael Olson? Yes, present. Ticket dismissed. Have a good day, Mr. Olson. But it happened in Arizona. Same thing. I went into the judge's chamber here, and my lawyer couldn't believe it. I went in, there are 2 females, a prosecutor and a judge, and I went over and I'm like, I need the question. I was just looking for the courtroom, and I said, I don't want to disturb you, and they're like, no, come on up. Let's look at what you got. And I'm like, here you go. And she's like, that's okay. Ticket dismissed. And then I went over to my lawyer, and he was in the right courtroom, and he's like, how the hell did you do that? I'm like, I walked into the wrong courtroom, and they asked me to come to the bench, and they wanted to see what I was here for. And they're like, dismissed. And he's like, what? Yep. You're free to go. Are bad. So I can go on and on, but my moral and ethics, the people that knew me weren't in question. Not even if it was a cop against me. They threw the cop under the bus. My moral and ethics reigned over anything they could say. So, I don't get it. And the opposite's been happening the last 10 years, and it's been driving me crazy. Letting these people get away with it. If I called, their ass would be grass. And it's just how fast they're going to cut them down. But off topic. So there's lots of universities, and not only for the football games and basketball games, but also just in general, like my friend Scott and that owned a bar, and we used to go there because they were University of Arizona graduates, and they bought the bar, and we used to do our alumni functions to watch the Arizona basketball games. And then I used to hang out with Costa, and Mike used to come along at times. But Costa went to U of A, and we watched the U of A football games together. But the whole thing is, there was another bar that was an Arizona bar here in Chicago, and it got all its business every night of the week. The majority of the people in there were just Arizona alumni. And it was in Lincoln Park. It closed down. They opened up the Firehouse and O'Malley's. But they closed that one down, but it got all his business, and they didn't do the same thing when they opened that bar. They didn't make an announcement to the alumni club and all the alumni that we moved over here. But that's how they made all their money. The majority of everybody that went in there went to the U of A. Now, they didn't graduate in the same years. There was a big range, 10 years or more. But there's a ton of University of Arizona alumni here in Chicago. A ton. And then if you throw on ASU alumni, Arizona State alumni, you can have a bar in Chicago that's Arizona State and University of Arizona alumni. And where do you get a lot of Arizona State alumni from now? Starbucks. Because they give free tuition if you do online education at Arizona State University. So the Starbucks employees, so you can have a bar that caters to the University of Arizona and Arizona State alumni here in Chicago. And there's a ton of alumni. Just like you can have a bar that caters to the University of Illinois alumni. And not just for special events. Like going there. And they go in there, and it's like going there and you meet people that went to the school that you never knew before. Or you can have a bar where Google employees hang out. That you would just focus on that employee group. There's 2,000 of them now. They say there's going to be 2,000 more. So there'll be 4,000 Google employees in the city of Chicago. So you can be a bar that just focuses on Google employees. And you got to be a Google employee. You got to show your Google credential to get in. And if not, they can do that. You don't have to be for the general public. You can be Google employees only. Or you can have Google employee only nights. There's a lot of corporations that have a lot of people, and you can just focus on that. It's general, and you send it out. And it's great. They go there and they hang out there. So all these places can focus on a set of employer groups or employer groups and alumni groups. And it's just not only there. You could say maybe all the CFPs in Chicago or all the CFAs in Chicago. Truly, it would be a cool place to hang out. Like the Boss Bar could be, they send out invitations to CFPs and CFAs. And you show both have cards. And if you're going through, you have the thing that shows that you're studying for the exam, and you can go too. So studying or as long as you're registered for the exam, you can come. And if you're a member already, a CFA, a CFP, and so all of them hang out there. So when they go in, they're around their fellow comrades, and they get to meet each other, they get to have drinks, they get to know each other. And there's a lot of them. So there's a lot of ways. Yeah, like Soundbar. On the top floor is East Asians. Downstairs is West Asians. Downstairs, it just happened that way. They don't hang out together. But downstairs you had Indians and Pakistanis in Soundbar. And then upstairs you had Koreans, Chinese, Taiwanese, Singapore, all those East and Asians, Japanese. See, you understand the Himalayas, right? Now, it might be a little bit different but people from India and Pakistan, they didn't go to China or Japan or anywhere else. They went from Pakistan to India, and they went to Afghanistan, and that whole segment hung out with each other. Yeah, the Pakistanis with the Afghans, the Indians with the Afghans, and so on. And that was all because of the Himalayas. They didn't hang out with the East Asians. And so my friends here, like I have a lot of Indian friends, and they didn't hang out with the East Asians. We had Raj, one who went to the University of Chicago. He got his MBA from Booth. He was the one that hung out every so often with us, with all of us Asians, East Asians. But when I hung out with my Indian friends, they would hang out with all their, West Asian people. It was just a natural click because of the Himalayas. It wasn't racism. It's just who they hang out with, who they have affiliated with, who they have a kinship in common. And so they have this whole commonality. And so you have this thing where Japan and China were in war together. And so was Korea and everything else. And so, yeah, it was a bad thing, but it turned into a good thing. Eventually, the war went away, and then they started trade and everything else, and you had the Asian tigers, and they started interacting with each other significantly, Hong Kong and others. And so they built the bond with each other. Now, the bad thing about the war is all the atrocities, but it also opened all the trade routes through Asia. Do you know that? Because the Japanese opened up all the logistics channels, and then from behind the Americans placed the Japanese in all those islands, and they opened up the logistics channels. And so that started to trade in Asia. It didn't happen with India. Why do you think East Asia is so much more integrated? It was all because of World War II. And the Allies, first the Japanese opening up all the trade routes, because they were producing stuff in one country, moving it to troops in another. And then the Americans took over and further moved stuff, and we still had bases in the Pacific after the war and so on, moving goods from buying it from one country, moving it to another country for the servicemen. And then East Asia started trading with each other. That's why China is at 20 billion or 20 trillion and India is at 4 trillion. Because the war on terror, we didn't have these large segments of troops. We didn't have big. In Iraq there was, but again, outside of Iraq, in Afghanistan and that, those were smaller things, and there wasn't much trade. So, again, it didn't help expand, and that's more in the Middle East, Iraq. So, all these West Asian countries never developed their logistics. Because with the Japanese military, what did they do? They built all kinds of roadways. They did, just like the Romans did throughout Europe. They established all the logistics. So did, Alexander the Great with India. He opened up trade routes, and those routes opened up roads. But again, you don't understand how this stuff developed, and it really developed because of military logistical need. And so the Japanese built a lot of roads and everything else, and they built ports for their ships because they had a huge navy, and they were island hopping. And then we island hopped back, and we took over their ports and further built out the roads and further built out the infrastructure. And so we built out airports and all that. So the Japanese did some, but we took over and we built it even more substantial. The airports, the ports, and the infrastructure. That's all American dollars pumped in. And yes, the Japanese dollars before that. But again, it came out of atrocity, and we were trying to end atrocity. And then we left bases in the Philippines, building out that seaport. We left in Guam, building out that seaport, or in Okinawa. And then now we're in Guam, I think. But anyways, we built out all that logistical route that helped Asia build its trading. And that's why in India and Pakistan and Afghanistan, we should have never pulled out the troops, because the Army Corps of Engineers and all that, plus our Navy, we would have built out ports and infrastructure, just like we have in Yemen. We have a port that we have that our Navy's at in Yemen. And we can build out that port, and then we can build out infrastructure within Yemen, helping the Yemenese government to stability, and help build out their power system and other infrastructure, which will support the naval base. But in turn, we need to put ground troops. So we need to put an army base. And with that, the Army Corps of Engineers. But we can help build out Yemen and create stability and prosperity and build out their logistical trade routes. And that's what we're doing. We build out the logistical. And that moves the army around, but those trade routes build out all their logistics. And so we have to, we forgot all about that. We established that in Europe as well. We helped after World War II. We built out, the Germans built out, truly, they built out train lines and everything else. They took existing and expanded upon them. And then when we took over, we built out. And yes, the Russians made the trains a different gauge, so the Germans couldn't run their trains on the track without changing, making it very hard for them to use the track. Truly, they put it at a different gate. So the Germans had a hard time using the Russian rail lines because their trains were suited for Europeans, so they could move their trains really fast through Europe, and they did, and it helped their logistical supply. But what did the Russians do? When they built their train lines, they made them incompatible to the Germans. And so the Germans had a hard time using the Russian rail system. Truly, they had a big time. They had to convert all their trains and that from where they were, and they had to open up a rail yard and convert them, and then, put them on, and it slowed down the logistical supply, and truly, and they outstripped their ability to pace. But in Europe, the train rails were all the same, and they flew through Europe, and they could supply themselves through the train lines. They had the air supremacy, so they didn't have to worry about it. The French resistance blew up the train lines, kept on damaging them to slow down logistics. And that's what the French did before we came. They sped up their thing about sabotaging roads and train lines. So it's slowing down their ability to move move their troops, move their armor, and then be able to supply them with ammunition and food and gas and everything. And so they should have known something was coming in that area. The Germans were really stupid. Surely, now they faked coming into Sicily, and they set it up that way, made it look that way. But I would have looked at where the terrorism was going. And the French resistance sped up all the terrorism. They were cutting communication lines, power lines, communication lines, sabotaging rail tracks, sabotaging roadways, trying to hit fuel dumps and all that. And so if they had half a brain, and thank God they didn't, they would have known exactly where the invasion was coming, because the resistance had to do all that sabotage to support the invasion. And they did. They sped up all the sabotage. They just didn't put the information together. And it's really like watching The Big Short. How dumb are we as a people? I mean, I watch that movie and think, how incredibly dumb are our regulators, like Bernie Madoff? How could he have done all that and not get audited? And then not looking at the trade confirmations and talking to the exchanges, because he didn't have any trades on the exchanges. I did trading for my clients. I had to go in and do it, and then I had to keep copies of the trade report and put it in the client's file, but it also stored on the system. But I made the physical transaction. So they can see it with the exchanges, the purchase and sale of securities. And the exchanges lost a fortune. They should encourage all the auditing. That stops people from lying. Now, the problem is with private placements. There has to be auditing. Like Charles Ponzi, it was private placement. The Ponzi scams are private deals, not on exchanges. They do it off exchange. Like the Wolf of Wall Street was over-the-counter stocks. But again, when you know your client and you have to do risk tolerance, why weren't they reaching out to SEC and just calling up clients and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you, and truly reaching out, like to talk to you, Mr. Jones. You have an account with blank blank, I forget his name, in the Wolf of Wall Street. And it says here that you filled out your risk assessment because we are required. We had to do a risk questionnaire. And you're required to do it. And you have to justify, based on that risk questionnaire, what they can do, and you can't go outside the parameters. And if the client requests they want to do something different, you got to get it in writing from the client that they want to go against what the risk questionnaire says. They have every right to go against it. But I would be calling from the SEC and saying, hey, Mr. Jones, I have this, and you're dealing with blank firm, and you're buying over-the-counter stocks, and did you fill out a risk assessment for them? Yes. Okay. And so do you remember what your risk tolerance was? Yes or no? No? Okay. Well, Mr. Jones, I have you down here. It says that you have a low risk. Do you know that these stocks that you're buying are extremely risky? They have high volatility. No, they didn't tell me they have or high volatility. What's volatility? That means the price of the stock can go up and it can go to zero really quick. And so it can, just as fast as it gains, it can lose, and you could be left with nothing. Do you know it has this type of sensitivity and movement? No, they didn't tell me that. They told me it was a sure thing. That, well, no, it's not a sure thing because it trades daily, and if a corporation makes a mistake, it can cost the corporation, and the stock can go down. So you bought it here, here's where it's trading, but doesn't mean it's going to stay there. So, again, they could have stopped it by simply making phone calls. And what did I implore them to do? I actually told them, as a trader, I wanted to be audited. And I told truly straight out, I wanted them, FINRA on that, to do auditing. Why? Because I wanted to get all the unethical people out of the business, get them sanctioned, get them fined, and get them thrown out of the business, opening up business to me. I was sick and tired of paying high errors and emissions and everything else for these unscrupulous pieces of garbage. And so I wanted them out of it so my business could grow. There's some beautiful Asian girls in Chicago. But I wanted them out. I even told my boss I wanted, and this goes to Rob Johns. Reggie told me he sanctioned me for putting things in writing. He's like, no, just call him over the phone. And I'm like, I want things recorded. We don't record here at Rob Johns. Yeah. That way we get gray. Now this is somebody who fired me. I told him, I want my line recorded. I worked at Vanguard. Everything was recorded. I told Nick, I want to take recording and have everything recorded. I want all my phone calls and all that. I want the emails. I want everything I give to the clients recorded. I want everything I receive recorded. I want total transparency. So at Rabjohn's, that was 2009. I got hired in 2008, and I was demanding this, and they sanctioned me not to do it. And he took me in the office and told me not to be this way. Just like this tailgater right here. I would want this guy to be taken down immediately. You don't get the right to tailgate. Look at this piece of garbage. But you won't do anything about it. Look at him fly around the streets of Chicago like he owns the streets of Chicago. Like he's the shareholder. Truly, you pay taxes, and he's just one of many. But he thinks he owns it all. But I do. But that's it. I would yank the license immediately. See what it's like not to drive. Take public transportation. I don't care if you're an Uber, you're out of business. Temporarily. And then you tell the client, like, I can't violate it. They'll yank my license. Make them the bad guy. Truly, I can't do that. They'll yank my license. My career will be over. That's the point of them being the bad guy. That's why you have compliance officers and that. I use it out all the time. I tell them, truly, they audit me. I can't do that. I make them the bad guys. My boss looks at everything I do. I can't do that. So I make them the bad guys. They get paid to be the bad guys. But they don't have to be the bad guys because I tell the people that want to do the bad things, I can't do it. Roger Dawson, the higher authority. I tell people that the same thing with God. I can't do that. God is my witness, and that violates the parameters of the Bible. I can't do that. I've told that to people before. It's against my moral and ethics, like serving a pregnant woman alcohol. I can't serve a pregnant woman alcohol. You can fire me. I'm not, but the girl and her friend worked for WBBM. And you know what she said to me? Thanks for caring so much. Thanks for caring about me. Thanks for caring about my unborn child. You're right. I won't have the beer. Give me something non-alcoholic. She thanked me. Her friend was right next to her, and she smiled. And she used to talk about her on the noon business hour and that. She used to be my regular. Good lady. But she didn't chastise me. She immediately thanked me. Thank you for caring so much about myself and my unborn child. Thank you. And I became better friends with her. I didn't see her friend again, but I saw her. Just like all these retailers down here. From Neiman Marcus to Saks Fifth Avenue to the others. The Greater Magnificent Mile Association. I became friends with them all, helping with ideas. In return, and this is a Latino guy, he was managing at Macy's the something room, the Oak Room, I think it was. And I was part of the Mag Mile, and I was always invited as a friend. I never officially joined, but they kept on wanting me to join the Mag Mile, so they kept on inviting me, trying to convince me to join the association. And anyways, I met him, and he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, I'll take care of your mother and, so on, and bring her down for the Christmas tree lighting. And there's usually a long line for the Oak Room and everything, and I'll just take them right in, set them up at the table. So I told my mom, and she told Laura and Emily, and she went there, and he did exactly. I emailed them, and he emailed me back. Everything was confirmed. I gave them a name, and He went through I didn't give him any pictures. Now you can send over pictures, but he went, Mrs. Olson, and called out her name, and she raised, and there was a huge line, and they were at the end of the line. He was like, Mrs. Olson, could you please step up with your party? And she went by hundreds of people, truly, walked right by him, right up to the front, and they ushered him into a table for 3. And immediately the waiter was over and took care of him. I emailed him, told him, thank you very much. And he's like, no problem, Merry Christmas. That was his Christmas gift to me. Because what did I do with him? I was sharing ideas with him about picking up business and efficiencies at the Oak Room. I think it's the Oak Room, whatever, in Macy's. And he's like, really? I didn't think I could do... Yeah, you're right. And he was like, you know what? I'll pay you and come in. And I'm like, no, how about my mother? And my mother, she was thrilled. I think she couldn't stop bragging about it for about a half a year. That they had such an incredible time. But he took care of me immediately. Reciprocity. I helped solve his problem. He did something for me immediately. That's how it used to work. So I could go around here and people like, I'm an own Boss Bar. And I get carte blanche treatment. He's an Arab. Now, his son doesn't run it well. And I told him that. He lives up by me, actually, in the North Shore, Northwest. And I saw him at a gas station filling up. I'm like, your son's doing... Yeah, his son, not like him. Very much overspoiled and lazy. And so business was suffering, and he knew, I need to replace my son. Truly, he just doesn't have what it takes. He wants a legacy, right? He wants a legacy. Well, if his son runs it into the ground like my friend Teddy did with the Chicago Fish Market, he took it over from his father and it failed. Teddy didn't know what he was doing and ran into the ground. My friend Jimmy took over a fencing company here in Chicago that was big, and he took it over and went into the ground. They weren't able to manage it correctly. What do you think the Google guys did with their venture guys that were invested in Google? They told them, you guys can't run operations. You just don't know how to do this. You've never done this at this kind of level. You don't have the ability. And both Sergey and Larry said, you're right, we don't. So we'll drive all the intellectual expertise and we'll get a professional CEO in, and they did, and he'll run the day-to-day. He'll manage the company and everything else. You just keep on thinking of those great ideas. That's what they wanted them. They wanted them to keep on bringing the stuff like Steve Jobs with Apple. He had Tim Cook to run the numbers. He wasn't supposed to run the corporation. He was supposed to run the financial numbers in that. Steve makes it, and he's like, make this work financially to Tim. That's what Steve did. I want to make an iPod. And it's an engineer says, blank, blank, make this work financially for us. Okay. And they go in, okay, we can source material from here. We can do this for labor efficiency. We can do this and that. And he take and work with the engineers to get the costing right, to make it happen. So he left all that to Tim Cook. So he'd come up with the ideas, the engineers would perfect it. That's why when he came back, Wozniak wasn't there. He told Woz to do certain things, and Woz didn't do them. And Woz was part of the reason that he left the first time. Because they had a conflict. Steve said, I want to do this, and not, and then they stuck with that path, and the corporation went down. Woz, he was a soldier. You know, he could go and you give him his task and he's very good at it and very efficient. He's not the idea guy. He doesn't understand the markets or anything else, and he didn't. And when he came over, he made bad decisions and Apple went down. So what do you think? When Steve came back, Woz left, and he stayed holding all the Apple stock, but he rode it all the way to the top. He didn't get involved in operations anymore. He let Steve Jobs be the man. He stayed out of his way. So you got to understand your place. Are you the visionary? Are you the rainmaker? Or are you just one of the foot soldiers? And there's all levels. There's generals in that, but Eisenhower, he was the rainmaker. Patton and all them were foot soldiers. They execute. So, again, knowing your place. Who's the rainmaker and who's not. And I told people at Charlie's and that, like I said, my job is to make it rain. Your job is to execute. You're the foot soldiers. I'm the rainmaker. And I made it rain for them. So people lose who they are. And they think, and then these companies go to garbage. Because they think they're something more than they are. But brutal honesty with yourself and your capabilities. If you want to be there, then you have to prove that you have what it takes. What do they do in the NBA? You can say, I want to be an NBA superstar. Well, you got to go out and prove every day that you're that superstar. I want to be the next Michael Jordan. I want to be the next Oprah Winfrey, or I want to be the next Donald Trump, per se. But again, you got to see where they started and where you are. Donald Trump got $1 million loan, but he also, the most valuable thing Donald Trump had, all his father's connections. All his father's connections. His father was a very successful developer in New York who tied Donald in. He tied Donald into everybody, every single mover and shaker. And yeah, they knew how to deal with the mafia. John Gotti and all them were there. And they had hands, but his father had that all worked out. What was Bill Gates' father? A highly successful attorney. He worked out the legalese for Bill Gates. His firm was with Vanguard. I know the history of his father. His father was a highly successful attorney, had his own firm, very successful, doing intellectual property work and all that, working things out for Bill. And then Warren Buffett's father, he was a successful broker, stockbroker. And so Warren Buffett learned from his father. Some people, like Mark Zuckerberg, now his father was a dentist, but he was still a successful dentist from my understanding. Successful dentist. So he learned from his father, being in the business. Not the same business, but he learned from his father. His father had his own dental practice and was successful at dentistry. His practice was successful. So he learned from his father. And this is why they say that people that come from certain things, if they're mentored properly from their parents, end up in those. If you're wealthy, you stay wealthy. Now, the thing is, if you want to go up, this is where Rich Dad and Poor Dad was right. You have to find somebody more successful than your parent to mentor you. If you're going to step up to the next level, you can't say, oh, well, my father is going to be my... That's what Derrick Rose, like his brother. His brother couldn't take him to the next level. He was the wrong... He could have ran social media. He could have did many other things, but they had social media back then. But he destroyed Derrick's career. He had no idea what he was doing. So the guy who ran the Yale Endowment Fund, he's the best, they say the best endowment manager in the history of endowments. His returns are always phenomenal. He says you got to get the right people. If you want to be in a certain place, you got to get the best people to put you in that place. So if your parents don't have that, they're good at what they do. But if you're trying to move it to the next level, you got to get exposed to the next level. And you need to find something. And that's where Rich Dad and Poor Dad's correct. You have to find that person that can take you to the next level. They do that. Why do you think people leave for religious sabbaticals and they go and hang out with the Dalai Lama? Truly, they want to move to that next level of spirituality. So they go there and they go to a monastery because they want to connect deeper. Simon, he went to seminary. Jessica and all them wanted to go deeper. And so they found these people that were much more gifted at spirituality than them. So they found these people so they could go to the next level. So if you're going to do like, you know what, his name is Dick Van Dyke. Do you know he does what Chevy Chase does? They're in slapstick comedy. Dick Van Dyke is like the Marx Brothers and the Three Stooges. Chevy Chase did all these falls. Watch National Lampoons. He's a stuntman. You know there's stunt comedy, right? If you're a stuntman and learn comedy, you can be a Chevy Chase. That's why his talk show failed. It was one of the worst talk shows I've ever seen in my life. Him and Magic Johnson were the two worst talk shows I've ever seen in my life. Both of them failed immediately. I couldn't believe it. I turned them on. I was like, oh, Chevy Chase has... And then I listened. I'm like garbage. And then I listened for Magic, garbage. And they failed, on record time. They're stand up. They don't do it. Johnny Carson, which they didn't do, they sit down there and interview. What did Johnny Carson do? He did all kinds of skits, and then he had Ed McMahon to be there as the straight man, but also Ed added into the conversation. Ed was more gifted at the conversation. And now Conan had Andy. It didn't work as well with the two of them. But Johnny, if you study Johnny and Ed McMahon and watch Ed add in commentary as he's talking to the guests, Ed aids Johnny with certain questions, with injecting certain thoughts at certain times. That was Johnny's weak point. But every show he did all kinds of skits. That was his strong point. Ed didn't do them. Johnny did them all. That's what Chevy Chase didn't do. Magic Johnson, he's an athlete in that. He should have brought on people that were athletes, like Roy Firestone. You know, Magic Johnson got entertainers, and he doesn't know anything about that stuff. He should have brought on people that he knows a lot about the sport and can ask very impelling and deep questions, like, say, training techniques or something that they're going to disclose that no one else knows, but you're going to get it on the Magic Johnson show. I love Roy Firestone. He would ask these questions, the probing questions, but they knew. And so when you watched it, you were going to get something that you couldn't get anywhere else. But that's not what Magic did. He tried to be like general guest and get into Hollywood people and so on and go with that. And that doesn't work. You have to play to your strengths. And if not, you have to bring in an Ed McMahon, a co-pilot. So knowing where you're weak. Like, you know, I'm watching Blackpink, and yeah, I like all four of those girls. They're very lovely young ladies. But the whole point is, they have to understand where their chemistry, where they fit in between the four of them. Who's the baritone? Who's the tenor? Truly. They need to understand their different ranges. So when they're blending pieces, and you have to understand with different words, bring out different volumes. So when somebody's writing a song, that song will cater to your voice or cater against your voice. And it makes you sound horrible. But if the lyrics are right, like me, I actually sound better when I sing opera. When I go upscale, I sound a lot better. I figured that out by doing voice samples. Not so much good, like, hey, baby, or rapping, not so good. But opera, much better, going, hey, Figaro, Figaro. But whatever, that's a sample. But it was much better then. I had problems with my windpipes now, a little bit. And, my sinus on the left side, a guy crushed it in with a metal pipe when I was drunk. It's another reason I quit drinking. Somebody took advantage of me when I was drunk. I was just going home. And he mugged me and everything else, but I was so unbelievably drunk, truly stinking drunk, I couldn't defend myself. And I don't like being vulnerable, and he left me in the middle of the alley. He knocked me out. And he crushed in the left side, my windpipe. So it changed a little bit, so I have an indentation on the left side of it's collapsed a little bit. And then I have a little hole in my nose because of, doing cocaine. My friend Corey said it was his pressure release valve. It burned a hole. So it changes my voice. So these actions, when you do things, like you don't understand, if you're snorting drugs, it's tearing up these are little crystals. And these crystals will tear up your nasal passageway. It grinds away your bone. They're crystals. And it's like sandblasting the inside when you do cocaine. And it tears up your sinuses. It's not a good thing. Just to let you know. So these are things that I was going to have addressed. But again, people got me into it, and I got myself out of it. So who you run with affects you. Like here, the tailgating in Chicago. Running in Chicago is a very bad thing because the people down here are pieces of garbage because they allow filth. We didn't allow filth. We take out the filth. We had a group called 3-1 Tours, and people that didn't play by the rules, we get rid of them. We didn't allow the garbage. So this used to be the 312 area code, and they had hats that said, I'm a 3-1 Tour. And it was an unofficial club. And so when we went places, we protected each other. But these people don't play by the rules. Why would you want them in your city? They're going to bring you down. So why would you want them here? Because you want trouble? You want problems? Like, I had my friends lose their nightclubs because of people dealing drugs in that Crowbar. Somebody was dealing drugs in Kenny and Cal, liquid ecstasy, and the girl had an episode, and he lost the club. He had nothing to do with it. Neither of them did. But the whole point is, these people bring it on. My other friend, he had people dealing drugs on his premise. I've never dealt drugs on any of my... I was a user, not a salesperson. These people bring them in, and my friends lose their liquor license because these people come in and they peddle drugs. And, just to let you know, when people are selling drugs on your premise, That's less money going to alcohol, less money going into the bar, and your liability goes up exponentially. So you don't understand that. That's where the Grateful Dead were totally wrong. It took so much money. They could have paid way more for concert tickets and would have had the money if they weren't buying drugs. And they could have perfected the psychedelic with the lasers and everything else like Pink Floyd did. People said Pink Floyd was the best, laser and effects that they've ever seen in any concert. They had the flying pig that went over in the air. Just incredible. Look at this piece of garbage right here. You can control the whole city. There's only a few million people here. How do you do it? You legislate it with the laws. And then they were going to do the plate readers and that. Mayor Daley said he was going to charge people for coming in the city and do it via plate reader. If you weren't a citizen, you got charged a tax to enter the city. An entertainment tax. But he wasn't. Mayor Daley's plan was to control everybody in the city. He was sick and tired, and this is where I agree with him. He was sick and tired of the freaking crime, and he was going to hit hard, but really it wasn't him as much. It was his wife, Maggie Daley. She was sick of drunk and Irish people drinking in public, pissing in public, drunken, stupid Irish. I know for a fact, I have friends that were best friends with Maggie Daley, and she hated that drunken, stupid Irish thing. And he took away and changed liquor license. He took away in Lincoln Park the 4 o'clock license and 5 and turned it to 2 and 3. And she wanted licenses to go away. She was stripping liquor licenses. She was trying to make this a dry town. Maggie Daley was trying to make Chicago a dry town. And this was only because the people running these establishments didn't do their job, and she was sick and tired of all these drunken incidents. And if she didn't die of cancer and get sick, she would have wiped out the liquor industry in Chicago. She would have got rid of the liquor distributors. She would have wiped it all out. And her husband was 100% on board to get rid of them all. She was sick and tired of them. So the only thing that took it off track, they don't understand. They're all these scumbags. If Maggie Daley lived, and I wish she did live, he was unbelievable. He had the graffiti club, the cleanup and this and that. He was in a wipeout. He was going to be so ruthless on crime. She was sick and freaking tired of it. That's why they moved in to that area and brought in the police force and redid the stitching and got rid of Cabrini Green and everything else and brought in that. She ran the show. But no one knows that. Oh, she drove. She was an iron-clad, unbelievably ruthless female. She was very ruthless. She was very much against evil, and she wanted to wipe it out. She wanted to tear them to pieces. And so she was just getting more and more animated, but she ended up getting sick because of it. Truly, I believe that's the reason she got cancer. But again, this would be a totally different city. You know, this would be the safest city in the world if she was alive. He would have stayed in office. He lost and went out because she died. People don't understand how powerful and how influential Maggie Daley was. Her husband had many faults, but she didn't have the faults of her husband. And she was very much sick and tired of the stuff, the pay for play and everything else. As she got older, she started getting more ruthless. If they would interview Mayor Daley, he's still alive. He moved to Michigan, married a black girl. His first wife was a white Irish girl. His second wife was a black girl from Chicago, and they moved to Michigan. But if you would interview him, his wife was getting more and more ruthless, cracking down on all the things, wanted her husband to go clean. And maybe it was because she was moving towards death as well, but she wanted her husband to repent of everything. She was a very hard Irish Catholic. And maybe that's another reason, but truly, she wanted all corruption out of it. She wanted it all gone. And she wanted the mayor's office to be ruthless. I mean, unbelievably ruthless. They didn't renew license for my friends. They kicked out the drink and other people and banned them from ever having a liquor license again because they didn't take care of the drugs in the club. Do you know Mayor Daley was becoming ruthless with drugs inside of clubs? And guess who was pushing that agenda? Maggie Daley. That's why we don't have Richard M. Daley Park. We have Maggie Daley Park. Not Richard Daley Park, Maggie Daley Park. So no one talks about her around here, but she was a very good friend for somebody like me. Being very ruthless against evil people. Truly. So the mayor's office here, and from Rahm to him, they have no guts. They're a bunch of cowards. Maggie Daley was ruthless. Where do you think he got the trucks to come in here in the middle of the night and tear up Mig Field? That was all supported by his wife. Truly, she was a power broker. And people very much respected her and feared her. And he went in and tore up Miggs Field in the middle of the night. And what did he do? He told the lawyers to go stick it. Sue me. And why did he do that? Because he was afraid they were going to fly a plane into the buildings in Chicago. There were terrorist plots. And he didn't want somebody taking off at Miggs Field, which was right here in Chicago, and running the plane right into a building. And he was fighting in court, and he wasn't going to have the terrorist threat continue. And so he didn't care. The people at Miggs, they wanted to maintain. He didn't care. See, there's some things that supersede. Like I tell you, there are reasons to break the law. And Mayor Daley said that the terrorist act trumped, and I don't care. They can sue the city on the back end. I'm shutting down Miggs Field. And he went in and had the things move in the middle of the night, and they tore up the runways so planes couldn't take off or land. He protected all these people. He was so afraid that a plane would fly in these buildings after 9/11. He wanted to get rid of it. A small commuter plane was harder than a commercial airlines. Those are commercial. They tighten those, but the small commuter planes, they had big problems with. But I don't understand what the FAA is not doing. And only that pilot can fly that plane. And they have to do all kinds of financial and psychological background checks on helicopter and commuter pilots. Even drone pilots now. Truly, even drone pilots. That these people, they have to tear it down, tear them down apart, and continuously. It's a continuous thing. You have to constantly go through the ringer. You ever walk into a courthouse? Truly, just take a courthouse. What do they do? Or go into a jail. And what do? They inspect you coming in and inspect you coming out. They don't care how many times you come in and out. You go through the same process. They don't give any grace because one slip up means a gun in the courtroom. So They put you through the same process every single time. Bend over, prostate exam. Then don't work in a courthouse. I have lots of lawyers that work in courthouses. They don't complain about it because they don't want somebody bringing a gun into the courtroom. They have no problem with the checks. I talk to lawyers, and they have no problem with going through constantly getting checked because they know that they could be in the courtroom with that gun. So they're good with it. Here's my bag, here's my shoes, here's my stuff, no problem. And they're in and out of the courtroom, and they go from courthouse to courthouse, and they go through the same thing each time. And they don't care because they value their life. So they like better be safe than sorry. So they have no problem with it. You ever go to a military base? It's the same thing. For servicemen going on, going off, they check them all. Every single time. It's for the safety of everybody. So I don't get these cops. Maggie Daley would have the mayor fire the whole police force, get rid of them, bring in the state police temporarily, and then rehire and retrain. Truly. I mean, they're incompetent. You know, he started having police cars towed, Mayor Daley, because they were parking illegally by City Hall. And he got sick and tired. City employees, he told them, including police, if you park illegally, the tow trucks are now authorized. City tow trucks are now authorized to tow police cars. And if you get towed, you pay. The city doesn't pay for the tow. The ticket's on you and the tow's on you. And he started towing police cars. Look it up. But he moved out of office. He got sick and tired of them going to court, illegally parking because it's a cop car, illegally parking, blocking traffic around City Hall. He comes in and out of City Hall making his life miserable. And he said, start towing the police cars. They illegally park and go into the courthouse, tow the police car. Response, there are many other cops on the street. So, at least he wasn't afraid to whack the police because he had power. And everybody backed his play. Not their play, his play. Freaking pieces of garbage. Like all these cops hanging outside the club and talking to the doorman to pick up women. It's a joke. So where's Mayor Brandon Johnson's wife? Is she a Maggie Daley? Nancy Reagan, ask anyone, she was a very tough lady. She supported Ronnie, and right there, making sure he never slipped up, and if he did, she saved him. Making sure he was perfect. And she had his back. She would destroy anyone. They were a power couple, as Jen said. So I don't understand. Mayor Daley wanted to get rid of all the bums in the city. They were disappearing in 2005. He moved to Jones Academy. And I'll show you where he moved it to. But he didn't want any more bums on the street in Chicago. He was getting rid of them. They came back under Rahm. he was getting rid of every single bum on the street. He didn't want any more bums on the street of the city of Chicago. 0 bums. So where is the ruthless female that is this champion for God? We had Maggie Daley, but people don't really know about her. And I found out about her deeply in 2001 with a banker that owned a bank. He did a startup bank, and he was good friends with Maggie Daley. He was a male, and I was trying to do bank-owned life insurance with him. And we started going into the things, and he started disclosing all this stuff, and we talked for a long period. And he started disclosing stuff about her and her influence and how she was driving these agendas. And so people don't understand. They talk about Mayor Daley, but the true power player was Maggie Daley. She wasn't in office, but she was the power behind the man. So, but Mayor Daley should talk about her. Maybe write a book about her and her influence. Truly, how to be an incredibly awesome first lady. He didn't stay in office that long because she was horrible. And he stayed faithful because he feared her too. He didn't cheat on her. She had his head. And so he stayed faithful. So she was a no-nonsense lady. That's why Mayor Daley didn't get into any affairs or anything else. She had this idea of what an Irish Catholic should be like. And she wanted it in their relationship. And like I said, as she got older, she got more vocal to her husband. She was gingerly, and he did some things that weren't good. But later on, she started getting seriously vocal. So, somebody should talk about her influence on this city. Not just Maggie Daley Park, but what she really did behind the scenes. So, I wonder, is there any powerful female like that in the city of Chicago anymore? I mean, a truly powerful, no nonsense, takes no shit, knock them down, destroy them type of female. I love Margaret Thatcher. Tony Blair wasn't as strong as she was. She moved lockstep with Ronald Reagan. She was awesome Prime Minister for Great Britain. I really did admire her. She was awesome, and I watched how Ronald and her worked together. They were unbreakable. They worked seamlessly together. The stuff that happened in the Middle East, if Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister of Britain, Britain would have never pulled out. That would have never happened. Where we went, they went. Where they went, we went. We were in lockstep. Unbreakable, inseparable. Where is our allies like that now? That, you know, you have this incredible alliance. The axis of good to destroy all evil. Oh, that was supposed to be the churches. You know that, right? The Christian crusades and that. That was supposed to be the churches. The axis of goodness to wipe out all evil on the face of the earth. Where is that happening? That's why I get so peed off at black people. The black church unbelievably failing. So I don't get it. And one of my clients, she was a praise minister in the black church, and she loved me. Truly. And I cried when she died. That's how I came with John and Ella Sims. She was awesome. And she was going to bring me into the black churches to teach financial literacy. And she had this agenda. Yeah, Brenda had this agenda. God rest her soul. She died of cancer. And she left her family well off. She took care of Ellis and John. She took care of her husband. She took care of her obligations. And I got her a very good rating. And the sad thing is we didn't detect her cancer. But I loved that lady. She was an incredibly good black woman. And she reciprocated and cared deeply about me. And she wanted me to bring in. This is Pacific Gardens. This is where Mayor Daley, for them to move, and they did move over here. He didn't want the homeless affecting property tax revenue. And isn't that smart? Because they get more money this way. And plus, people don't see who comes and goes. So the people that are in here, they don't get tarnished. Where they were on state, that's very busy, and everybody sees who goes in, who goes out. And then people see him and they're like, oh, aren't you the guy who stays at Pacific Gardens? You know, you get a reputation, right? Moving over here, people don't say who goes in, who goes out of Pacific Gardens. And he built them a brand new, nice facility. It's really nice. And that was a deal with Mayor Daley. But he wanted them to stop affecting the tax revenue, the tax base, negatively. And he wanted them to get the homeless off the street. He built them a bigger facility, more room, more beds and everything to get the homeless off the street of Chicago. But they forget what the agreement was. And it was great. They got a beautiful brand new structure. And all the infrastructure and everything provided by the city. And those people got privacy. So people don't know who they are that go in and go out. And so they have anonymity in that way. And that's a very good thing. Here's Chicago Fish Market. The guy is at David's Church that owns this. He's a white guy. He owns this, and all his employees basically are black. He hired lots of black employees. He employs lots of black people. He's a white guy. He employs lots of black people. Do you know the biggest club promoter in the city of Chicago? In the black community, the biggest club promoter in the city of Chicago for the black community was a white guy. A little heavier. He was balding. I met him at Excalibur. And he was the biggest promoter in the black community, this white guy. He had all these parties we had at Excalibur and other places, and he drove the biggest amount of black people. He was a very big, and he had he had all black security that worked for him. But these were, and I became friends with them because we did several functions with them, and there was never a problem at any of his functions. He didn't do the Derrick Rose party. That wasn't his. But he was no nonsense, and we did have black security for the Derrick Rose, and they did shut that down. The black security shut it down because of the thing. But I don't think the white guy was the guy, but we did have the security team, and they shut it down. The black security shut it down. But they were a bunch of no-nonsense guys. Male, female, they searched you like no tomorrow. Why? They don't want to be shot. If somebody brings in a gun and there's a gun going off in the club, now they have an obligation to get involved, and that means they're going to get shot. So they would go through and remove any mace, anything. You got to go put that back in the car. You can't bring that into the club. And they're like, honey, I got to search you. Open the bag. They go through the woman's purse, everything in the purse. They were no nonsense. And if you didn't, you can't go into the club, honey. I just stayed behind and watched. They frisked everybody. They didn't take any shit. If you weren't willing to get totally frisked, you weren't coming in. So they were no nonsense. But again, they don't understand that the city of Chicago with the police and that if they allow slack, then they're the ones that get caught up in the crossfire. I think police forget that if they don't do their job to the fullest of their ability, then they end up getting caught in the crossfire. And so black security, they don't want to be caught in a gun. They don't want to be involved in the E2 where all these people stampede because somebody sprayed mace inside the nightclub. So they took no prisoners. Meaning either you complied, and if you didn't comply, you didn't go in. So we never had problems because they were a no-nonsense group. They didn't want to be shot. So we didn't have any drive-bys or anything like that during all these big black parties, which I was part of the security team, but we just supported them. They did the lead. But the whole point is, I don't get this. And I don't get the cops because they end up putting themselves in it. So why wouldn't they be diving down into community area policing and show up at the churches and do talks at safety checks at the churches, truly, and get on the agenda? They can speak every week on Sunday about crime activity in their area. They go to church. I went to Covenant. We had a Chicago police officer, but he needs to be from that community, and he can stand on the stage and talk about, we have some muggings here, we have this and that. The fire department can get up there too in the church, talking about putting up smoke detectors and fire safety. So I don't understand. The mayor's office could have somebody speak at the church as well. But at least every Sunday, the police would speak. I'm talking every church, like in Deerfield at First Presbyterian. They give the lay of the land, what's going on with this, and the mayor's office can bring up stuff at the church. The Deerfield mayor. Truly. Like, can come up every so often, or a city councilman can speak at. We have all these aldermen. Why don't they speak at the churches, show up at the different churches and make their rounds and speak on what's going on, the agenda in the ward? We have this coming up. We have these buildings coming in and so on. We're going to have a town hall here. We have this infrastructure project that we're talking about, and go around to the churches, the aldermen. Truly, they want to get to know the congregation, but this is doing their job. And so the church congregation is very informed of what's going on in their communities. And that means they can take proper action and be united in doing things. But like in the black community, they don't unite. And David, my partner, said there's more black churches, and there are. I went by, there's like tons of black churches, but they're not informed. And they can go up there and talk about, things, and then somebody from the Cook County Department of Health or the Chicago Department of Health can talk about sexually transmitted diseases and syphilis and how to prevent syphilis spread. Since syphilis is very big in the black community, but they can talk about this, and they can every so often step up. I would talk about HIV and pending cures and that, informing the congregation, because, black men and women have high rates of STDs. And so I would be talking to the congregation, saying, and keeping them abreast and saying, we're going to do this as, to you and keep you abreast. And we're going to bring in people and they'll talk from, Northwestern or whatever about, this, or Rush, or, there's another hospital over there. And they can talk about how to take care of themselves and so on. Do they go into the bums and everything else and talk to them about, at Urban Ministry or Pacific Gardens? Like, Urban Ministry is to end domestic violence. Pacific Gardens is to end homeless. Unshackled by poverty. That's what they mean, unshackled. It's unshackling them from poverty. That's Pacific Gardens. Urban Ministry is to end all kinds of gangs and street violence and domestic violence. That's what Urban Ministry, and together they can join forces, Pacific Gardens and Urban Ministry. They don't have the same mission, but together they have a complete mission. But they can go in and talk to them. Even have officers talk about how to deal with police, and then people can raise their hand when they're talking to the congregation, like, I had a cop pull me over and blank, 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 blank. Okay, we can address that. So I'll talk to you afterwards, and then we can go over it, and there's a formal process, and we'll set up an appointment. You can come in and, state your grievance, and we'll go ahead and handle the grievance. And we go through this process. And so we want to make sure that our officers are doing things correctly. And maybe there's a misunderstanding on your part where the officer was correct. But I don't know. And I'm open to hearing your story. And we'll get to the bottom of it, and we will resolve the issue. But the church is supposed to be the best informed. They're supposed to be on the cutting edge. The cutting edge. So I don't understand. And so they can bring in the aldermen, talk about things going on, bring in the police, and the police on a weekly thing. And talking about, great, no crime. How are we going to keep it no crime? What are the enforcements? Are there parking violations? And the cops they talk about parking enforcement and all that. So then they can have the building inspector come in and talk to the churches too. If you have any building inspection problems, elevators, stairwells, no heating or anything else, we're going to have the building department come into the church, and it's going to talk about the process of complaints and everything else. But also, yes, you can do it through 311, and they can talk about, all of them can talk about what is non-emergency and what is emergency. And then they can give out a little card that gives 988. That's if you think you're going to commit suicide. 311 for non-emergencies, 911 for emergencies, 311 for homelessness. 211, I forget what that's for. 111 for rent assistance. 333 for electrical assistance. 444 for water assistance. Truly. And so we have all these 3-digit numbers and combinations that we can make. And 444, 333, 111. So you have 9 of them. You can go 111, 222, 333, 444, 555, 666, 767, 888, 999. And then you can do 911, 311, 211. So again, you can address, and it's a simple 3-digit code to get what you need immediately. And they can give it to congregations at churches, a card front and back that they can stick in their wallet. And if they see a homeless guy, call the Prevention for Homelessness, and now call 311. But they can have a separate line, like, 777. You call up, so you already know it's for homelessness. Yeah, I have this guy. I see this homeless guy over here. Oh, okay. Where's he at? Okay. We'll get an officer out there to do a safety check or well-being check, and then we'll notify the Department of Health that they might have to come over and have the courtesy van come over, and we'll drop them off at Pacific Gardens. Truly, we'll drop them off at Pacific Gardens. Or we have a domestic violence case, and they can go over and stay at Urban Ministries. We were at PADS. We were a homeless shelter and domestic violence shelter. Yes, PADS is also a domestic violence shelter. It's a cooling off. So, say you get into it with your husband, and your husband can call up. You can go to PADS shelter, and we'll take care of your husband for the night. Just letting him cool off. Truly, they're welcome. Meaning you want to prevent it from getting anywhere else. They don't have money to stay at a hotel and that. They can come over. Urban Ministry, you can go stay with them. They'll set you up for the night. And if you need to stay there for a little bit, no problem. As you and the wife are working it out and you don't have the money, you don't have to reside under the same roof. And then she leaves the house, you can go to the house, shower, change, or whatever, and you can work out the schedule. And then they can offer you counseling. The priests and pastors, they can work with the clergy that gets certified in mental health, Alexian Brothers. So again, we were a domestic violence. We got one call when I was there in the middle of the night to take a wife and 2 kids. And so, okay, no problem. And we were waiting, and then they called us back and said, no, the wife is going home with the kids. They decided, they settled down, and the husband and wife decided. But did the police know where to take them? They don't have to stay at home. You're having an incident and say, hey, you need to step out of the house tonight, get a to-go bag for yourself. We'll wait here. Go pack some things, and we're going to take you over to Urban Ministries. And they'll set you up, and you can stay there, and I know you got things to do in the morning, and you can get a shuttle back from them. Urban Ministry has a shuttle. We had many shuttles at Lakeview Church. We had several vans. We take vans to take trips all over. So this is a small Asian church, but we had, I think, 2, 3, 4 vans that the church bought. So you could take the vans and do all kinds of trips. So let's go straight. But why don't churches have multiple vans? And, I don't know how many fit, 10, 12 people in each van. But you can go to different outings and from the church, drop you off, pick you up in the church van. And we were a small church, and we could buy multiple vans. So, and we go bowling, we go to other places, and we could take the congregation. That's where I didn't drive. We'd take the van, like when we helped the refugees in Rogers Park. We just take the Lakeview church van down and help the refugees get settled. And all of them were black from Somalia. And we helped them get settled and established. And then one of them opened up a restaurant, and I heard it was really good. Scott Gertz was supposed to take me to Somali food a long time ago before I ran into helping the refugees. This is in, I think, 2000 or something like that. He said he'd take me, he knows Somali food. I never had Somali food, so he was supposed to teach me, like Rob Dang was supposed to teach me Punjabi food. I never had Punjabi. They were supposed to take it to me to the restaurant and explain. It's just like my friend Eric. He was supposed to take me to his rabbi's house. And I wanted to talk to his rabbi. Oh, yes, I like talking to rabbis. I like having these theological discussions with rabbis. So my Jewish friends, I'd like to get to know their rabbis. That was before, that's Eric Shorowitz, yeah. But I didn't end up meeting his rabbi, but I requested, this is back in the 90s, to sit down and have a discussion with his rabbi. I like to get to know my rabbis. And Chicago, the conservative congregation here, Jewish, on the North Shore, was the first female rabbi. And it was a conservative Jewish congregation. Yeah, Bethel, is it? I forget. And the head of it was a female. And we used to talk about her in 2001 when I was at GCG, because I used to play cards with this guy, Alan, and he was a sales manager for one of the big hotels in Chicago, the Hyatt Park Avenue. But, again, we used to, talk about that, and I used to talk to him about Jews for Jesus all the time. I talked about then, and I talked about with my Jonathan Ehrlich and many others. Now, they would kind of laugh, but I was serious with Andy and John, and then with Alan and Michael Gluck and all them. I used to talk to them about Jews for Jesus. So, again, I had these conversations for a long time, but people don't know. And yes, I was trying to meet with other clergy and priests and that, and having conversations with them. But this goes a long time ago. So how many people do you know that set out to talk to rabbis and priests and that, or nuns, and have philosophical conversations about religion, about society, about duties? So people think this is like some new thing, but what was new was I was getting extremely pissed. This is where I used to live. And so I started playing Christian music in the locker room at Export. And I started being more vocal because I was sick and tired of what ISIS was doing in the Middle East and the persecution of Christians, and this country wasn't doing anything about it. The Coptic Christians getting killed, but this is before them. And I just started getting unbelievably rage. And so I started getting highly vocal. Somebody had to, and then I wore my cross outwardly, and I started playing Christian music, and then I started publishing stuff on Facebook, and I was just getting, the trend just got to me. I couldn't take it anymore before, and then I made my announcement, but I just couldn't take this filth anymore. I couldn't take what was happening around the world and this stuff going on, so I started becoming highly vocal. But people don't understand, I've been doing this for a long time, since childhood. So this is nothing new to me. So, again, this is not like it's something new. This has been my whole life's mission. Here, I'll go down this way, but I gotta go home. The video's getting a little bit long. But, again, I did all these things behind the scenes, and I was trying to move the needle positively. Trying to influence indirectly through discussions and charitable acts and many other things. Do the Adam Smith invisible hand and get things moving in the right direction. I was looking to move into this building when it was under construction. Me and Jen came over. I told her I was interested because I wanted a view of the park. So I was looking at, moving it to a 2-bedroom, one for the baby and one for us. So anyway, so we came over and looked at it, but we also looked at 2 bedrooms in our complex herself. But do you ever think about that? That people are planning a family and you're in a complex like 1515 South Prairie. And Jen went to look at, there were some 2 bedrooms that were available or listed. But do you ever think about internally looking for people that might want to move up, and maybe they have somebody they want to move into that unit. So somebody else wants to get out, somebody wants to move in. I did that. Like a lady that we had this property we rented from in Arizona, I set her up for, I think, over a decade of consistent renters. She was really good to us. Anytime we needed something, she took care of it. Now, she had a property management group she used, but she had to sign off on everything, and it was an elderly white lady, and anything I needed, she would take care of. I was the one with the property and everything else in her, but she was awesome through the property management group. If we needed something fixed, it would be fixed immediately. And so what did I do? When other roommates moved out, other roommates moved in, when I finally was left all by myself and I was there for a whole summer, I had the house to myself, which was wonderful. I was there for several months by myself. And then I got Eric and Beth and John to move in. And then it changed over. Beth moved out and Joelle moved in. And she had, from me, a decade plus of continuously rented her property with high quality renters. High quality renters. She did me well, a solid, so I did her. And I did her a solid year after year after year after year after year. So I believe in paying back when people are good to me. But also, when you're bad to me, I believe you should be punished severely. So, again, what is this city becoming? It's only several million people. And so I don't get it. From federal law enforcement, state that run all the highways, so you don't have to worry about the highways. The highways, all the federal highways are taken care of. All the county roads or county highways are taken care of by the sheriffs. The 90, 94 and all the others are taken care of by the state troopers. So that frees up the Chicago police for all the local. And then you have the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and many federal law enforcement. Plus you have the state troopers who have their own drug enforcement and counterterrorism and many others that overlap. So there's more than enough with prosecutors and everything else to make sure this is the world's safest city, that no one gets away with anything. So I don't get it. I truly don't get it. You need somebody like Maggie Daley, who is fearless, pushing the agenda. So again, we don't have any champion. So she wouldn't put up with this garbage. She would crush these people. My friend had the bridge. He lost his license. That went away. It was a noise ordinance. They took it away. It was on Elston and Division. It was a hot place. But again, he didn't control the noise. He could have redirected the speakers and did things, but he didn't. And they lost and fought in court and lost, and he took away the license, and there went the bridge. But again, that's Maggie Daley being very behind, making sure her husband stays on agenda, doesn't waver. Like my Brazilian girl, she told me behind every successful man is a very, very determined woman. And I do believe that with the Bible, two becoming one and being very much solid supporters of each other. And that's what she was talking about. The reciprocity in the relationship. Being tenacious supporters of each other. But also being righteous. You can't support anything. Like Jen would never ask me to do anything illegal, and I would never ask her. That was a given. That was understood in the relationship. Now, there are times to break the law, but that would be something that's understood, that this is a necessity to accomplish this that leads to a greater good. And there's the university club. Again, it's a great place. I used to hang out with Adam Johnson and my friend Rob Betts. They were members of the university club. It has a great burger. The dining room's on the top floor. It has a beautiful view of the park and everything else. But you have to graduate from college to be a member. And you have to have 3 endorsements from 3 different members. So you can't say, oh, I'm going to sign up. You have to have 3 letters of recommendation. So that means you have to find somebody. If you don't know anyone, you have to go to them and then set up times to meet 3 different members. And they have to sign off on you, endorse you to be able to become a member. So you can't just like, oh, I graduated college, I'm joining. No. They want people that fit in with their members. They don't want members to get alienated with each other or upset with each other. So if you don't work for their chemistry, they put down, don't work. And they can give rebuttals back, so on and so forth. You want to fit in. Maybe it's not right for you. There's many. There's the Urban League, and that's another club. It's here in Chicago. It's Urban League. You can join that. There's the Standard Club, which is primarily Jewish, but it's not only Jewish. You can join the Standard Club. So there are other clubs to join if that doesn't work. But they're looking for people that fit with their members. They want to keep their members and make their members happy, and they want people that come in that jive with their members. So they don't want unrest. They want people. I played billiards there. I played squash there at the university club. And we hang out at the bar at the university club. There's cards and there's all kinds of things. But again, they want people that are going to fit in. Part of the University of Chicago. And this is what you don't understand. Taking a student, you got to see if that student fits in with the culture. So what, they have the grades in the LSAT or the GMAT. Do they fit in with the culture of the university as well? Because the thing is, a lot of students transfer. They leave because they don't fit in. You have to understand, you want the chemistry. So part of the admission process is not only meeting that, but making sure they're the right chemistry. You have to turn away people. They're like, they have all this, but they're not right for the chemistry. And you're going to end up with a very disgruntled population. So you're only as strong as your weakest link. So it does matter. You're not catering to them. You have a specific focus, and you want certain people. And this is what I'm talking about with the Presbyterian, Lutheran, and other churches. You're looking for certain people. You're not supposed to change your church. You're supposed to find those people that fit your charter, that blend in with your chemistry. Here's the Gleacher Center. And so they have a particular. If not, there's Northwestern, there's UIC, there's University of Illinois grad school. There's a lot of grad school. Notre Dame grad school down here. So it's best for you as well. Because if you don't fit in, then you're not going to make friends. Me and Jen said, making relationships and strong relationships in grad school is even more important than undergraduate. If you're going to grad school, one of the top values of going to grad school is making strong relationships. So going to the fellowship things is very important. Building those relationships, because these people want to be greater influencers. In grad school, undergrad, it's good to make relationships. But grad school, if you're going for a PhD, again, it's a much smaller population, but you want to make good relationships. You don't want them to be disgruntled. So you want to go into the right program where you jive and they jive with you. It's a two-way street. So you lose, say, 50% of the value. Listen to my MBA, my personal MBA, but he talks about making connections and relationships. That's what you're doing in grad school. I think that's a precursor to understanding what grad school's all about. Unlike you, I think Josh should have went to grad school. Should go to grad school if he didn't. The book is a great precursor of positioning yourself properly to be highly successful in grad school. So that means you do the work outside of the classroom. You do the work inside of the classroom. So my professional MBA sets you up. My personal MBA sets you up properly for grad school. So you position yourself correctly to be highly successful when you do the endeavor. Set yourself up for success. Those that failed to plan to fail. Because you are planning to fail when you failed to plan. So set yourself up for success. People talk about opportunity. That's when preparation meets opportunity. That's called luck. So when you run across this person, like I've been prepping very hard, even more harder since I lost Jen, that if I get a girl, I don't plan on losing her again. So making sure other people don't. I self-evaluate and figure out what I could have done better, and I'm going to do better so I can be more successful. So when I get that next girl, I don't want to lose again. I've been crying for 20 years because I lost. And in every way, I can't figure out how this person is better than me and how he's more right for her than me. And it really sticks in my gut, the loss. Just like everything else, I couldn't believe I lost my career. I worked so hard to position myself so correctly. All my flaws when I lost it the first time, in the first breakdown, and lost my career, I wasn't going to lose it a second time. So I doubled down. I got more designations. I did more charitable work. I worked better in the office. I worked better with people. I worked harder, smarter, longer. And now I lost it a second time. And I don't know how that's even possible. Truly. Because I keep on going back and I'm thinking, how the heck is it possible that all these people survived and I failed? Where they were so inferior to me in every way. So, again, Yoko Ono, Music of the Mind. Here's Robert and Lori, volunteered here for over a decade, on and off. But I would have done all kinds of fundraisers, all kinds of things. I tried to share ideas. They were shut down. They had me right there, and they could have tapped into me, and I would have helped driven so many different agendas and made them so successful. But they failed. They pushed me out. I didn't want to leave. My partner David, for 2 years, told me to quit, to leave. And I didn't want to abandon. So I I was going to move to Saturday, and when both said I could, and I set it all up, and then Mary terminated my relationship and said no. And I had to turn in my badge and everything else immediately. So the next day I came down, drove all the way down into the city of Chicago, parked, I had to pay $10 for parking. Went in, dropped off all my badge and everything immediately. She said they needed everything immediately. So, all right, this is a conversation late night, 6 or 7 o'clock or whatever at night. And I said, right after work the next day, I'll be down dropping everything off. I went down, dropped off all my badge, credentials, everything, turned them all in. She said she needed it now. Well, I say I need certain things now. But it's funny. Like, people have asked for payment. They want it now. I give it right away when I have it. But every time I ask for something now, it's like, nah, it can be 10 years from now. It can be never. Well, then you're going to burn. And what I want better speed up. There better be a holy fire under you delivering. So, again, I'm going to cut this, but this is Russian division. What is this corridor going to be? We have the Magnificent Mile. You have Oak Street. What is this What is this corridor? Is this the Golden Corridor? Because you have the Golden Triangle, and Rush Street, like Gold Rush, runs into the Golden Triangle. So you get a rush of gold going down Rush Street. And now this is electric car central. But it's nice that Tesla right here is around all these high-end shops, because the car starts at, before, now they have the one is like 40,000, but it started at 80,000. Well, the people shopping at Prada, Christian Dior, and all these places, yes, YSL, all these places have that kind of money. And then there's Rivian right up the street. So this is the Rush Street. This is rushing into the gold. So Rush takes you into the Gold Coast. So this is a gold rush. When you're running up the other way, downstate, you're going from the Gold Coast up. So, you're moving in and out of the gold rush. So Prada right on the corner. There used to be Barney's, now it's Cartier, high-end watches. And those high-end watches and jewelry and that go nice with Prada. Truly. They should have a relationship talking to each other. Because somebody buying Prada wants the jewelry and everything, and Prada doesn't sell those watches and that stuff. And Cartier doesn't sell the bags and that, so they go over there, they get the clothing, the bags, and come over here, they get the necklace and the lady's watch or whatever. Truly. And so these merchants can work together. But you have all these high-end restaurants, Hugo's and Gibson's and Tavern and the Belvedere. And then you have this there's a hotel right over here that's nice. You have Lux Bar right over here. And I think they have some of the most beautiful cocktail waitresses. You can't see it. Let's go up here. That says Lux Bar right there. Whoop.